I wanted to have a look at what the last beta did well and not so well. Let's start with the good. As you can see in the comparison, the graphics got a significant upgrade. I also think the Tier 1 AA versus Tier 2 air unit balance is a lot better now, giving you more room to choose units in your Tier 2 slots without having to worry about Falcons just trashing you. That gave a lot of room for deck building that was missing in the first beta. This overall made the hard counter system feel a little less hard. Guardian Shield was an interesting idea. I don't agree with the execution, of course, but I like the idea. Where to even start? Let's start with the least bad. Problems that should just be symptoms of a beta. Like the matchmaking being a bit whack or non-existent. Or the servers being laggy because it was in Asia. I can forgive that. Now the pathfinding you're looking at, I can definitely forgive less. As this was a small issue in the first beta, grew into a bigger problem in the second, and has now just turned into a full-blown tumor. I'm sure it'll get fixed though, right? Right? Let me clear up the difference between design and balance real quick. Balance changes are numerical changes, while design is how units interact, what their intended role is, how they are meant to be used. For example, a sniper will always outrange other units, but by how much is a balance question. There are things that kind of cross the line. Are these recalls having such low cooldown that you cannot outposition them? Even with the fastest unit in the game, a balance or design problem? I don't know. It all depends on the intent of the creator. I'm gonna avoid balance issues and focus on actual design problems, because these will not be solved over time, like balance issues will. If you ruin the design, there is no fixing it later, unless you completely rework the system. And what comes next are things that are confirmed to be design issues, because David Kim himself said they are done by design. And boy is he wrong. Let's start at the beginning of the game. Instead of having to build up your economy and build production facilities, you can just spawn units instantly. This was done in the name of making the game and macro simpler, easier, more accessible, but it has quite the opposite effect. In StarCraft, all you have to do is press the unit button once or twice every 18 seconds. While in Battle Aces, you are forced to spam the button every half a second or so if you want constant reinforcements. This makes macroing units quite difficult. It also makes the main base way too easy to defend by just spawning units whenever you need them. I would solve this issue by reintroducing production queues. You have to pay, let's say 100 for one, but then you can either queue your units up manually or use some hotkey like Control plus the unit button to set it to continuously produce. So it will, for example, spit out a wasp every 3 seconds. Each unit then of course needs a build time again. The next problem is this. Just look at it. Now this reveals another problem. Ranged units need hiding spots to survive against the wasp flood, but the only hiding spots on the map are the workers. The map needs to have less smooth edges, so you can actually jam units in those nooks and crannies to protect them from getting swarmed. If there are enough of these in enough places, this would even allow ranged units to move out early in the game. Which brings us to the next problem, the early game. If played correctly, it is incredibly boring, because there is no objective to fight over. The main and natural bases are too close together to be hard to defend, and there is no reason to move out on the map. The best play is to just sit back and do nothing. And I think that's just wrong. There should be something you can achieve. There needs to be something you can achieve. In StarCraft, this is scouting. In my version of Battle Aces, Blitzforge, this is done by spawning a King of the Hill type objective in the middle of the map that gives a small but significant amount of resources if captured. This brings us to the mid-game, in which the correct play is always the 2-base tech. This was already true in the first beta, but got worse this time around, because now you don't just tech to tier 2, but to tier 3. Because those units are so overpowered, it just doesn't matter what happens before they come out. There is no counter to this either, as most units are simply not fast enough to cross the map in 60 seconds and win the game. Which leaves the game in this very weird state, where you should just be running double tier 3 and hope your opponent doesn't have the one unit that counters you. As you can see, there is no tier 3 unit combo that does not lose to a single tier 3 unit of either Foundry or Starforge. Obviously I'm not saying units shouldn't be counterable, but it should take an equal amount of effort and not just having the right unit. This is a good example of counters working. The advanced blinks at the top counter the Gargs and the blasters the destroyers at the bottom. If the order of units would be reversed, the Gargs would be countering the blasters and the destroyers the advanced blinks. This is what the game should be about, having the right units at the right time in the right place. Not whether or not you have them in your deck, and the matchmaker decides if you win or lose. Brings us to the core of the issue. No, not that. The counter square. Cube? Tesseract? Abomination thing. This graphic is lying to you, it's not a square. They are air units, and those are small, big anti-back or splash too. So you have at least a cube. But wait, What way is the cube rotated? Should splash air beat ground anti-big? Who knows? Now you may come at me and say that there are neutral matchups, but you'll be wrong. Melee core units can't deal with Crusaders at all, while ranged core units are completely fine against them, since they can shoot from multiple rows so their DPS is just high enough. You may call this a balance problem, but how can it be? There's no number you could change to solve this issue. You'd have to make all melee core units anti-big effectively by giving them bonus damage versus big. But now crabs may be able to counter king crabs, which are splash, and therefore should counter all small units, which then isn't the case anymore. So what do? Add individual damage numbers for each unit against each other unit? That'd be just bad design and not new player friendly at all. But wait, they already did that? Oh, and units have different values in 2v2. Well, the system's clearly broken if that's what is needed.